Oh,
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Disruptive Author. Today, I'm talking to disruptive author Tanya Fisher, and we're going to be talking about burnout. So, welcome, Tanya.
hi, Deb. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Excellent, thanks.
Oh, good to hear. All right, so let's jump in. You've been a disruptive author for a couple of years now.
Yep.
Can you share with those people that are listening what you do and what your book is about?
Okay. So my job, my role in this world is I'm a professional supervisor. And what that really means is that I work with people who are counsellors, coaches, nurses, anyone who's an allied health professional. And so effectively what I do is I work with the people who work with people. So in that way, I do that so they avoid burnout, remain well, and stay as balanced as they can. Um,
Awesome.
so to answer your second part of that, my book is called Supervise Me, and it's really a counsellor-specific book because it's about for those who are starting out into the field, and it's so they can begin to understand how a good supervisor is just one of the best relationships that they're ever going to have. And
Yeah.
it's that sense of now with COVID, we've been updating the book because so much has changed in the people industry and how we do things now.
Yeah, totally. I think things have changed for in a lot of industries, but it's
Yes.
a very important role that you play, and I think especially as we move to a place, I guess collectively, where we're so much more aware of how important mental health is.
Yeah,
So supporting the people that are supporting the people
that's it.
is a very important role. So, and I know burnout is something that you've got a great probably I wouldn't even just say professional, you've got a personal interest in it as well. You're quite passionate about it. So can you please describe for us what might someone expect to experience if they were going through burnout? So what sort of symptoms and how would someone recognize it?
I think the great irony with burnout is that in all my experience, it's the person themselves who are in a burnout state. They're the very last person to know about it because they're still trying to go through the motions and still doing what they're doing. So it's normally other people that start to notice a burnout, and they might be asking questions about how are you feeling? Is your work okay? And my favourite, because I love this one, are you getting enough sleep?
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is about burnout, and I'm just going to do a little bit of history
Okay.
because that's the important thing about burnout, because burnout was a term they actually coined way back in 1975 by Dr. Freudenberger, which is a real name, I promise. He,
Also, yeah.
he spoke about he spoke about burnout in three components, and he spoke about how burnout impacts the emotional exhaustion, which is really about a feeling of being drained or worn out. That sense of, as a client once said to me, I just feel empty. So it's that sense of
Mm,
emotional exhaustion. And then
okay.
there's a sense of depersonalization that starts to occur. And that's where it's a loss of maybe empathy, caring, or sometimes even compassion, which generally happens because you're feeling disconnected. You're feeling disconnected not only emotionally from yourself, but you're feeling disconnected from those around you. And the third part of that is a sense of a decreased sense of accomplishment. And that really shows itself as often I hear that as people saying that they feel negative about how they're performing, or that they're saying things that there's a loss of a sense of personal accomplishment. And it might be a job that they've really enjoyed. And then it's just this all of a sudden kind of feeling. I guess for me, the one way I once heard it by somebody saying once that if I can do this job, anybody can do this job. I'm nothing special.
Mm,
And it was just that their opinion of what had happened had started to change. And so it was that sense of they couldn't see the positive that was occurring anymore for themselves or what they brought to their work or their team. So in that way, those three components, they're not a linear process. So it's not like you're going to feel this, this, and this, because you can experience any one of those throughout any time of your life and career. But it's when you kind of get this, the three of them, the combination of the three of them, that's when we start to feel overwhelmed. And that's really the nucleus of burnout.
Okay, and probably our ability to be self-aware would impact on that as to what you would start to feel first and how deeply. Yeah.
That's it.
So tell me, how severe can burnout get?
That's a great question, because it really is. It's that sense of, I've seen people dread going back into an environment or back into a work environment because that environment is creating distress. And I use the word distress intentionally because it's the distress that when that's left unchecked, that's what leads to the burnout, because it's that distress that starts working on those three components where we start to feel exhausted, we start to disconnect, and we start to have that decreased sense of accomplishment.
All right. Well, that leads into my next question. What I wanted to ask you was, what does lead to burnout? Is it lifestyle induced, or is it a mental health condition?
Wow, that's a great cracker question. So what leads to burnout, in a nutshell, is distress. But distress is so subjective. What I find distressful, you might be okay with. For instance, I find driving in traffic distressful, which can be a bad thing because I often drive to clients. However, my teammate, Amanda, she loves the driving. And if someone pisses her off, she likes to intentionally do something to piss them off as well. And so in that way, it's that sense of where if someone was in front of me intentionally trying to piss me off, in a red hot minute they would. So I would find that distressful. Yet for Amanda, and she has a different role than mine, so when she's working with people, she finds it extremely distressing when people are emotional or when they're talking to her about emotional situations, where for me, I find that really easy, because Amanda finds it distressing because she can't give people a fix. She can't say, if you just do this, you will fix it. So the more distressed they become, she becomes more distressed. But for me, I know my role is not to fix anybody. So I can just be there, listen to what they're expressing about, and just give them the space to talk about it, because I know it's not my responsibility to do anything other than to hear them.
Yes.
So in that way, it can be really interesting. So I guess in the way when you say, is it lifestyle induced, that can be distressing situations in our lives, can be illnesses, caring for family, substance misuse, or even financial situations, anything that impact us. Distressing situations in our professional life, and my gosh, in the whole generation of COVID, that's a whole new ball game. But in our professional situations, that can be anything that can be hearing other people's stories, hearing their traumatic stories, which often we might hear the term vicarious trauma, which is that sense of anybody that hears stories, they can be impacted by those stories. So our teachers, our nurses, our counsellors, anyone that hears about other people's traumas, and it also can show up in long hours worked. It can show up as being an environment that's understaffed, and especially lately, I know a lot of organisations, a lot of companies are running on the smell of an oily rag. Yes. So it's that sense of, being a part of that. And sometimes it can work, and it can also be working with aggressive, passive or expressive people in the workplace. A bad manager can make a workplace really horrible.
Yes.
And if it is that type of environment that's hard, your manager just tops it off. So to answer your question, while burnout isn't usually taken as a mental health issue, and that's because it tends to be area specific.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, say your area of burnout is work, the low mood and the feelings of tiredness and disconnection, they'll follow you wherever you go. But that sense of overwhelm generally happens in a specific place like work.
Okay. So let's move on then to what needs to be done. Once someone recognizes that they are in fact going through burnout, whether it's, they may have needed to have been pushed to that realization, they may have needed some help to come to that. But once they get it, once the penny drops, is there a protocol for recovery?
I think the greatest thing that anyone can do is talk to someone that they know who is safe.
Mm.
And a safe person is always someone who will listen without judgment or criticism. Because if you're experiencing burnout, you're already feeling emotionally tender, for lack of a better word, but also it's that sense of, something's not quite right, even if you can't put your finger on it. So you're trying to understand what's happening because, gosh, I wish we could see ourselves how other people see us. Where somebody else that's walking alongside you and says, so tell me a little bit about what's occurring, and they can start to then piece it together. So I'm going to say find somebody safe to talk to. The other thing I'll do is say finding a professional supervisor that's away from a specific environment is beneficial because it means you can separate from the work environment. And it gives you that ability to talk to them about anything and everything. The greatest role supervisors have played in my life is that when you can talk to them about the process of the work environment, or you can talk to them about your own process in that work environment, because they'll ask questions and a supervisor will start to explore different perspectives, just so you can start working out what is the it that's causing you to feel drained, to feel disconnected, to feel negative. Because I guess the red hot tip is that often there's a starting point. Mm-hmm. It might be something that in retrospect, when you start feeling more connected, you can name it.
Yep. Totally.
I guess the big thing, and in my life, I'm going to say I've danced with the devil, because in my life there was a point in my life when I worked with a remarkable supervisor, and one day I went and I was working with them and I was just explaining how I felt, and I worked in a real environment that I was sure everybody else was great and that it was me, which is right up there with that negativity, something's got to be wrong. I've done something wrong. And this remarkable woman had the courage to say to me, just because you're working with recovered addicts doesn't mean their behaviours have changed. It just means that they've stopped taking drugs. And for me, that one sentence changed my life, because it gave me the ability to see the environment and to actually start pinpointing what was distressing. And what was distressing in that environment were other people's behaviours.
Yeah.
That was what was causing the doubt. It was causing me to begin to disconnect because I didn't understand that situation. And even though I continued working in that environment for, I think it was about another 6 to 10 months, it was fabulous because I could start doing things differently because I could see it really clear.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
And that's it. It's that sense of, even though I was still in what was starting to create that burnout scenario for me, because I was with someone who was safe, we can then start to look at it and go, okay, so what's occurring and what do you really own versus maybe what do you not own?
So what I hear in there too is that you were labouring under a false belief.
Very
And
much so.
that was causing, so I always say there's that, pain is the gap between expectations and reality. So,
Yeah,
and the bigger the gap, the more
that's
pain you're
it.
going to feel. So,
That's it.
that to me says that's something that does contribute to burnout very much.
Because that's your emotionality, and that's the exhaustion. And when we as people can't navigate that gap, then that in itself becomes an emotional event for us. That becomes distressing. And
Absolutely.
so, why aren't I coping like everyone else? Or why aren't I having the results? Or why do I just feel down when I talk with this client? And all of that, and it's that culmination, and it's because of that very thing, because whatever is occurring, it's creating distress.
So, Tanya, how can we actually avoid this to begin with? Are there strategies that we can learn about and put into place that would help us actually just not get there?
Yes, there's lots. And it's funny because it's one of those things. I think normalizing burnout, first up, is such an important thing to do, because I always talk to my supervisees about burnout, because it's just a part of working with humans.
Okay.
We're humans working with humans. Welcome to burnout. There's going to be some form of emotional exhaustion. There's going to be some form of depersonalization by the very nature of working with people all the time. If you're 100% engaged with people all the time, you're going to be emotionally exhausted. And that sense of a decreased sense of accomplishment, because when we work with people, it can be difficult because people have their own way of doing things. And so in that way, first up, it's about normalizing. It's about normalizing that burnout can occur, and to be aware of it, and that no one's immune. And I think the other good thing is talking to people, if you work in an environment that you have supervision, or I know I work with people who are in the Defence Force, who they don't call it supervision, we call it mentoring. And so during that way, we talk about, so how's your month? What's happened? What have you learned? And that type of starting to normalize all the different things they think and feel. So talking to somebody externally about your work processes is a great start.
Excellent.
And also about how you deal with the stories you're hearing. So talking to somebody about the conversations you have, and talking about the difficult people you're working with, and sometimes working for. Not that I said that, but, just sort of looking at the whole experience of your job, and just knowing that not only is it people that work with people, generally they're there because they feel a real compulsion to actually, go out there and do good work with people. And I tell you, that type of person, and I can hear that we tend to put ourselves second or third or fifth because we're busy, making sure everybody else is okay. So in that way, the way to avoid burnout is to make sure you maintain your own good self-care, which is, here's a shock, make sure you take breaks.
Yes.
Have lunch.
Rest.
Get away from your desk. The world is not going to collapse because you've gone 10 minutes away from your desk. Have a good balance between work, home, writing, fun. So your world doesn't become one thing, that it's just all about work, because when it's all about work, the blinkers come on and you forget to look at other things.
And then you get out of balance.
So easily. And it's allowing yourself to sleep well and eat good food. And it's about finding your way to best exercise. Get that blood flowing, move your body, and just keep going. The other thing that I'm going to say for everybody that's listening, get a good routine for switching on and switching off. And I mean that by, I work as a counsellor. When I am with my first client in the morning, I've put a routine where you get Tanya the counsellor. you're still not getting part of Tanya, the person that was, you know, doing the dishes 20 minutes ago, or so in some ways, I guess you could say I arm up
Okay.
and I kind of, while I'm still always present, but I die a little bit to my emotional life because Tanya the counsellor is on.
Yeah.
And then when Tanya the counsellor is finished, I turn my off switch on and I engage with my family and friends because I don't want to be Tanya the counsellor when I'm with them.
No, not at all.
No, I want to be part of the conversation, part of the fun, part of, just a part of the part that loves to live and have fun.
And
so
part of having them as your part of your support network as well when it comes to family and friends. You need that as well.
And that's that balance, isn't it? That, you know, they say no man is an island. And that's why, you know, having a supervisor and having conversations or even having somebody that you can trust, that you don't traumatize with your stories, but having someone that you can trust and talk to about, you know, how things are going. And the other thing I'm going to say is, one of the things to watch if you are getting close is to listen to your self-talk. Consciously use positive self-talk about how you're traveling and how you're working with clients all the time, because Judith Lucy once said that we as people, we take compliments like Teflon and criticisms like Velcro.
Yes, isn't she intelligent? Yes.
So any perceived thing like being human, you know, it might be a client does something that maybe we may not think is in their best interest, and somehow we start to go, oh, if only they had. And as soon as we start to take that kind of responsibility for somebody, then, you know, it's starting to become a dangerous situation, because half the time I worry about having responsibility for myself.
Yes,
so imagine
I can
then
relate.
being responsible for people you can't really be responsible for.
And you've got no control over it. Yes.
That's it. And so it's that, you know, having a conversation, and it might be the teacher that says, you know, I did a good class today. I feel like I engaged well with the people. Or it might be, I feel good. For me, it might be when I drive to a client, I might go, I feel really good. I didn't yell at anyone on the way over here. Look at me scoring a goal. And it's noticing that to make sure you're intentionally using positive self-talk, but notice when you are using negative self-talk, what's happening when I'm using the negative self-talk? What environments am I in? So both of those things, if that's not the longest answer you've ever had.
No, that's great, because that's, you know, there's a whole range of things from there that people can choose from. And I guess for everything that you put into place, you're going to be setting yourself up better, placing yourself better in terms of managing distress.
Always, because it's all about our strategies and interventions. What do we need to be okay to do our job well? And what do we need to be doing so we're well?
Yeah. And then we're in a position to help others, maybe, if that's what we want to do.
And it's that, and you're right, Deb, because it's that old thing that we're always told, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And if I'm not traveling well, there is no magic way I can make people travel well.
No, I hear you. It's funny, I used to talk about, you know, making sure that your basic needs are met, like through the resilience classes and whatnot. And when you don't make sure that your own basic needs are met, it's like hopping around on one foot and hoping to stay upright when the waves come. It's impossible. But when you take care of your own basic needs, it's like having 2 feet firmly planted on the ground, and you've got a much better chance of dealing with whatever comes. You're grounded.
And yet the trick of that, and I can hear people talking in my own head there, we forget that we're important. We're so busy saving the world, we forget that we're important. And I love that analogy, because that's exactly right. If you're trying to spin all these plates and you're just spinning, guaranteed you're going to drop a plate, because welcome to being human.
If not the whole lot.
Oh, and many times during the day. If anybody's life is like mine,
Yep.
because as much as you want to be superwoman,
Yeah.
oh man, sometimes I catch a glimpse of it, but it's gone really fast.
Love it. Love it. Yep. So let's just have a think. Is there any last words that you have for anyone who thinks they might actually be heading towards burnout? And then I want to talk to you about how people can get in touch with you and actually connect with you. So are there any last words that you want to share?
I think the big thing is always, and I must admit I'm a reflective practitioner, so I'm always noticing how I'm thinking, feeling, and being around things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I feel drained? Do I feel disconnected? Am I negative about a work situation or even a situation within itself? And how am I traveling? You know, like I know my clients are doing well because, you know, we do good work, but how am I traveling? Am I trying to avoid certain situations, or am I trying to avoid certain conversations with people? Have I stopped caring about myself because I'm so busy caring for everybody else? So for me, they're red flag things. And it's that sense of, if you notice any of those patterns and behaviors and cycles, it's stop, reach out and talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can just be, this is how I'm feeling, versus right to the other end of the spectrum of, this is what's causing me distress. I need to be accountable for what I'm doing in these situations. So like you said about, you know, that if I'm feeling distressed and I'm still going into work, you know, trying to be well when I'm not well, then the hard part of that is that you're going to impact a lot of people with your unwellness.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in that way, in a work environment, especially if you're, you know, if you're modeling good self-care, that's a fabulous thing for people just to look at.
Oh, totally.
You know, so in that way, yes. So in regards to how someone might find me, my practice is called Working with Purpose, because what else does a good supervisor work with?
Yes.
So it's that sense of working with great intentionality. So Working with Purpose, people can ring me. They can look at the Working with Purpose website. You'll see my grinning face on there, and they can contact me via the webpage, or they can contact me via info@Working with Purpose.
Beautiful.
Or they can connect in any way they need to. I'm generally always around and always happy just to talk with people about what are they noticing, thinking and feeling.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I've totally enjoyed this interview. It's something that I think is so important for us to be talking about, be aware of. Yeah. So, and I love, like, you're one of the most qualified people that I know in the counselling circle. And, you know, I just love how intentional you are about how you use your skills. Yes, it's exactly.
Yes.
It's just having the intention, isn't it? So I very much appreciate your time. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you for coming on and talking to us and sharing that knowledge. I'm going to wind up now. So that's it for today's Disruptive Author podcast. And we will be back soon with some more great information. But look out for the interview in our next issue of the Disruptive Author, and you'll be able to read more from Tanya as well. So, all right. Thank you, Tanya. Bye for now.
See ya.